The professional career, which by the way never happens, it's 0% out of all the athletes that ever start get paid for playing sports. If you're so privileged that you get to play to the point where you're starting to actually age, that's a really unusual situation. And in that case, the few dinosaurs that exist in professional sports, it's really about cultivating efficiency movement wise, because output is no longer what it once was,
Hmm.
and cultivating lack of symptom, because if they just feel good enough at a certain age. You mentioned Lance Berkman earlier, being 37 years old and becoming an all-star. He could go out in jeans and flip-flops and hit home runs if he just doesn't hurt. The skill level is so high, you just need to get them feeling good enough.
Welcome to the Captains and Coaches Podcast. We explore the art and science of leadership through the lens of athletics and beyond. Today, we're back in my hometown to talk athlete resurrection with Ben Fairchild, founder of Fairchild Performance in Houston, Texas. Ben has built a reputation for transforming careers, from helping aging professionals like Lance Berkman capture World Series glory at 36, to guiding youth athletes through foundational development that lasts a lifetime. But here's what makes Ben's approach revolutionary. He sees the human body as an interconnected system, whether he's working with an 8-year-old learning movement patterns or a 35-year-old professional veteran athlete fighting father time. We'll unpack the dangerous trends of early specialization in sports, explore why multi-sport development creates more resilient athletes, and discover how the same principles that resurrect professional careers can build unshakable foundations in our youth. Now, let's throw it out to Ben to help us raise the game. Ready, and great.
We're in it. We're in Houston, Texas at Fairchild Performance on location, right in the middle of the kickoff of summer training for youth athletes. So welcome, Ben Fairchild. How we doing?
Thanks for having me, Chris. Yes, joy to be here today.
Yeah. I mean, just looking at the walls in your facility, is jersey upon jersey, and all of them with a very thankful message for your help in these professional athletes' career from all sports.
Yeah, we've been so fortunate to have interaction with so many impactful athletes over time, and the ability to kind of have an effect on them in some way that matters to them is has been nice. So,
Yeah. Well, a lot of what I want to highlight is from the ground up, the youth that you have training in there, the professionals, and what I want to lead off with is what I'm referring to as athlete resurrection.
mhm.
So some dudes have found you in their career and you've helped build them back better to step onto the field and then earn lots more money and freaking hit more home runs and do all the fun stuff on the football field. So where did you develop this knack for bringing guys back to life and high performance?
Yeah, so for the most part, it was just good fortune. I was blessed with an opportunity to be mentored by a fellow named Mackie Shilstone in New Orleans, who Mackie, goodness, he was a trailblazer in this industry, and still probably doesn't get the credit he deserves for being such an innovative thinker and such an intellectual influence on the industry pre-internet, pre-social media. He's been at this now for probably 50 years, I would guess. But at the time, I was kind of learning and finding my way. I had admired him from a distance as a kid growing up. I had a couple of his books, which to think about now is kind of weird. I was into strength and conditioning when I was 10 years old, and whereas most kids, it's just sports. They like the
Mm-hmm.
sport itself, but not the process to prepare for it. I was fortunate enough to get an internship opportunity with Mackie now 20 plus years ago. And I think it just so happened that his forte, or his niche, which was almost an impossible niche, was taking aging players and resurrecting their careers. And this was in the early 2000s. He had been at it for over 20 years at the time, but at the time I was learning from him, I got a chance to watch him work with Roy Jones Jr., who was attempting to become only the second boxer in history to move up in class to capture the heavyweight title.
Mm-hmm.
Previously in 1983, Bernard Hopkins had, Michael Spinks was the first to do this, and he was no one had done it since at that point. So Roy Jones had done his research, figured out who had trained Michael Spinks to do this, and he went out and hired Mackie Shilstone. So ultimately he was successful. He became the second and only other, I think, since to capture the heavyweight title by moving up in class to beat Ruiz, became a world champion at the heavyweight level. And being able to watch firsthand the amount of planning and the amount of thought that went into this preparation process was such an opportunity for me. And I think because of Mackey's general mindset, a very yes, innovative but also pragmatic thinker. He thought in a way that's what's the best decision we can make in every situation, really accounting for risk very heavily. He's a risk management expert essentially for athletes. Um, that just tended to resonate greatly with my personality. I felt like, particularly in strength and conditioning, because of the macho nature of it, probably a lot of risk takers are drawn to it. That just wasn't my nature. I thought, practically speaking, what's the best and worst outcome of every decision we make in the weight room? And I just so happened to run into a mentor that had that same, intellectual makeup, and that same personality when it came to strength and conditioning. So there couldn't have been a better pairing for me, and that really did kind of push me on a trajectory to help aging athletes figure it out, extend their careers, and extend their earnings over time. And then fast forward to 2010, I'm now in Houston. I had the opportunity to work with an aging Lance Berkman, who at that time was 35. Was kind of on hobbled knees, had two knee procedures that year, making it his fourth and fifth knee surgery of his career. He was 30 pounds overweight, and he came to me in a admittedly desperate situation, as he would describe. He was contemplating retirement. He only had two offers to play the following season. He's coming off the worst year of his career. And it was just kind of, again, right place, right time. I happened to have a system that he responded well to. We assessed him and figured out what he needed, and then it all just kind of happened. The 2011 season, he was an all-star again for the first time in 5 years. By the all-star break, he was leading Major League Baseball in home runs with 26 at age 36, and went on to win the World Series. The Cardinals named him MVP of their team. Major League Baseball called him comeback player of the year. And then Lance didn't need to do this, but he graciously turned and gave me credit for having helped him find that path. The following year, it was Andy Pettitte of the Yankees coming off of an 18-month retirement, trying to find the secret, to getting it back again, so to speak, at age 40. The following year, it was Jaime Garcia, the World Series champion pitcher for the St. Louis Cardinals, coming off of a thoracic outlet surgery, which is something that no one had ever returned to previous level of play from. A friend, Mike Reinhold, who was a great physical therapist in Boston, had referred Jaime to us. That was a great opportunity. And then from there, it's just kind of continued to go in that direction. So it's really kind of an impossible place to find in terms of a specialty, because there's so few out there that need that service. But just, again, good fortune of being in the right place at the right time with a mindset that just so happened to match that need.
Yeah, the Berkman, I knew him in his probably 10 years earlier because I lived across the street from me growing up.
Yes. Uh-huh.
So it was fun. I mean, I've always been a fan, just being an Astros guy, and then being a Berkman fan when, I mean, he opened up his doors and was just a cool guy to some kid across the street.
Yes. An amazing player, but a much better person.
Yeah, I believe it. The private sector, and you stood up and opened up a facility in Houston, and you get all these professionals that are targeting and coming to you for a reason. You also have to work with their teams, if I'm not mistaken. So how was that interaction professionally? Because these professionals have their team staffs.
Sure, that's a really good question, and maybe one that should be more obvious to all of us, the challenges that may come with working with players who have team assignments that are their career is to keep these guys healthy and on the field, and there's a lot riding on it. And I think that interaction should be a delicate one, because it's the team position oftentimes is unenviable in my view, because you have little autonomy in cases to kind of explore your own philosophy. And the red tape sometimes disables you to a degree from being able to help athletes to the level that you feel might be best. And then thirdly, I'd say just that every athlete in the team setting, particularly in the sport of baseball, probably has an expert that they're working with in the off season back home that they trust, and they've put all their kind of eggs in the basket of their philosophy. And now I'm just a stranger that with the team that's kind of forcing them into a different philosophy. So there's just a lot of things working against team practitioners, unfortunately, that don't allow them to do their best job, so to speak. And I think approached carefully, there was a time, I would say between 2012 and 2020, when COVID hit, the restrictions sort of changed with teams, where at a point I interacted with every strength coach in Major League Baseball across all 30 teams, and probably had really good working relationships with two-thirds of them, because we had so many Major League Baseball clients that happened to be veteran in cases and really valuable to the team, making it worth the strength coach's while to interact with us, hear what we had to say about their off season. Because of that trust that was built during that time, which is probably a really unusual and privileged situation. I don't even know if that could happen again right now. The coaches tended to let the players do as they pleased because they trusted our guidance. So again, probably not a reproducible blueprint to bridging that gap. I think there's a lot more hesitation around those relationships naturally, professionally, because the teams want to see that the practitioners have control of the player. It
Mm-hmm.
makes sense. So there's just some weird sensitivities surrounding that, but I think anything can be worked out with relationships being built.
Yeah, that would be the aim. I've had friends at the NFL level, and they've told me different stories. One was they helped an individual, and they were strength staff. They were on the staff. They helped them get back to cleared for hot, ready to go, and worked close with one of the office, uh, the front office to get there. And then as soon as they got them cleared, cut off the street because then they didn't
Interesting.
have to keep them on the injured
It's
reserve
true.
payroll.
It's true.
So that put a poor taste in that coach's mouth and gave him a real glimpse of the experience on the business side of things. And then another friend at another team in position where he's challenged because his head coach or one of the sporting staff is pressuring him because his guys are going to external private sector individuals.
Mm.
So then the pressure from up top is saying, hey, you're not doing your job connecting with them. They're not getting value in you here. And so he was feeling pressured in this strength staff situation
Hmm.
because guys would go off and find their own private guy in whatever city.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's high pressure. The players feel the sort of transient nature of their employment, and sometimes they seek outside help if they feel like the team does not have their best interest at heart,
Mm-hmm.
which can be helpful, but can also be dangerous if the two aren't communicating on what's happening. There can be a lot of overlap, and overtraining can happen quickly. And
Yeah, overtraining.
Timeout. Let's take 1 minute to talk training. I'm presenting to you the Old Bull program. This is the program that I am writing for myself, former collegiate athlete, former guinea pig of all sorts of training programs. I've seen and I've done it all, and my body is feeling it. In order to recover my joints, still continue to build muscle, and look the part as a coach, leading the way, I'm offering you Old Bull programming. This is what I'm following. It is fun. I'm having a great time bringing in former athletes and colleagues into the party. Meet us out there for a 7-day free trial. Click the links in the show notes to give the Old Bull program a run. Now, back to the show. Ready, and break.
What is a proactive approach that you take to then, if a professional does reach out to you, do you then go seek the team's guidance, approval? Hey, what program are you running? Can I compliment? What's your situation where you're reaching out here?
yeah, I think the smoothest way to sort of ease that sort of that marriage, or that trying to bring the two parties together, is to allow the player to suggest a path, because the player will have obviously a relationship with me. He's electively coming to me. He's not forced into that relationship, which is a huge advantage, by the way, versus the team setting. he'll also surely have a relationship with the team or some practitioner with the team. And I'll usually invite the client, the player in this case, to initiate that communication by way of text message or whatever makes them comfortable, and it's only in their best interest. Both parties should recognize if we can communicate and help one another. The situation is what it is. He sought outside help. Now, how can basically we help you keep your job as a team practitioner? And we just want to work together with you because it's good for the client that we both care about. So I think allowing the player to suggest a path of communication and initiate that is probably our most advantaged, mode of getting that done.
Yeah. And do any of those strength staffs or performance staffs you are introduced to, do they ever start to ask questions and see what you're doing out here?
Of course, yeah, and I think that's appropriate. If I were in their shoes, I would have a list of questions, and I would probably not be too excited that my player was going to visit an outside practitioner unless it was someone I had a long-standing relationship with and that had examples of success stories in such situations. So yeah, it's just not a great position to be in sometimes with you when you're with the team, and you can be made a scapegoat on the competitive side of things. Sometimes someone's head just has to roll when you're not winning games and you have injuries, and oftentimes it can be the person who least deserves it in the case of strength and conditioning. So
Yeah.
that's what I mean by the situation is unenviable when you're a losing team or an injured team, or and frankly you have little impact on some of your most star and valuable players.
Mm-hmm. And the private sector as well is also challenging when you have high schoolers coming in, because a lot of the football players, they have their strength and conditioning program with their high school coaches.
That's right.
We're starting to see a growing trend where schools are employing a strength and conditioning coach versus low man on the totem pole of the football team.
Yes.
So are you having proactive relationships and conversations with athletic directors and football coaches?
We're attempting to initiate these conversations as part of our effort, in fact, recently to really connect with every local school and at least offer a free resource if they want, additional options for free education. We love talking shop. It's one of our favorite things to do because we're passionate about the subject matter. But again, there's understandably there's sometimes a perceived conflict of interest, there with even referring people to us and that sort of thing. We would just want people to know that we're really passionate about what we do. We know that we have to consider the entirety of their exposure, including school influence, respectfully, to be able to help them properly and not overwork them. So, again, it's just about the opportunity to form relationships is what probably leads to the best outcomes, but it's not easy, and they've got so many people probably trying to contact them. I understand why they wouldn't always be so responsive. So
Yeah, it's a difficult population to work with, and high school is still like they're trying to hide all their secrets of winning.
right.
Where college, it's here's our whole playbook, here's our whole summer strength training program. Try to do it better than us. So it's very open. I'm hoping that trickles down to high school, but it's still trying to protect your precious
Sure.
playbook.
Sure.
Well, sticking with the youth, and I want to talk about the foundational development. And I've heard from another interview where you have the perspective of training 8-year-olds and professional athletes very similar. So where does that foundation lead to becoming a professional, and what's your approach if you get a green kid in here, 13 years old, never touched a weight in his life?
Yeah, in the end, they're both human bodies. In majority of cases, 2 arms, 2 legs, a head, a spine. So in one sense, we're still coaching human movement, and we want, whether it's an 8-year-old child, as you referenced, or a 28-year-old NFL linebacker, they still need to understand how to move all those parts properly. So it is, one, about movement quality, two, about incremental fortification of that movement quality with a greater intensity challenge, changing some of the variables, be it the amount of load they're working with or against, the stability of the environment, the competitive distractions of seeing something move in front of them and having to react to it. In the end, we're just coaching kind of a progression of human capability, regardless of the age level. I think the biggest difference in training a 13-year-old and a 33-year-old athletically is that the 33-year-old's sort of tolerance to variability is significantly less threatening when they're that well developed and physically mature. A 13-year-old with too much intensity put on them can do some damage pretty quickly that may or may not show up at 13, by the way. And we see this with pitching, with MRIs of elbows that are damaged or cross threshold at 22. But there's a history of overthrowing that never caused symptom, but it was causing underlying pathology. So I think just understanding kind of where the threshold for damage lies in each athlete, and it's much more about building habits movement wise as a young athlete, and then being able to incrementally challenge those things. Whereas for an aging athlete, we're probably trying to cut corners to make them more efficient as they start to lose output very late in their career. And again, this is a 1% of 1% of the athletic training population. The guy who's now so good at what he does, but so old that he's starting to lose power. It just never happens. A professional career, which by the way never happens, it's 0% out of all the athletes that ever start get paid for playing sports. If you're so privileged that you get to play to the point where you're starting to actually age, that's a really unusual situation. And in that case, the few dinosaurs that exist in professional sports, it's really about sort of cultivating efficiency movement wise, because output is no longer what it once was. And cultivating lack of symptom, because if they just feel good enough at a certain age, you mentioned Lance Berkman earlier, being 37 years old and becoming an all-star, he could go out in jeans and flip-flops and hit home runs if he just doesn't hurt. The skill level is so high, you just need to get them feeling good enough,
From both sides of the plate.
That's a good point. Yeah.
For him. And while we're on that 0%, how are you communicating that to parents with unrealistic expectations of their kid that are coming in to you and maybe hold you accountable for it's actually 0%?
I really like that question. Not in a condescending way, of course, because everyone, rightfully thinks highly of their child and wants them to have the, endless opportunity. But I'm a statistics mind and a statistics person, and the sad reality is that 99.999% of us were eliminated from contention from any professional sport at birth. The moment we were born and we were 17.5 inches and not 20.6 inches, and our parents did not play professional sports, we weren't going to the big leagues, we weren't going to the NBA. So you could pretty much put all your money on that the day a child is born. So to think that anything between that day and age 21 or 22 is going to have an overhaul impact on that is foolish statistically. So just, not being discouraging with parents who have high hopes for their kids, but also laying out kind of there's certain metrics that natural selection shows us predict professional outcomes for athletes. If we're looking at the world of major league pitching, mobility is going to be the telltale. If a kid has clinical hyperlaxity, if he can, put his forehead on his knee, but also produce lots of force and has some quote athleticism, odds are he's still in contention to pitch at a high level. The moment a kid, we measure his shoulder external rotation at age 12 and it's 92 degrees on his throwing side, not 122 degrees, it really doesn't matter how we train him. He's not going to the big leagues to pitch. And I think that's it's a fair conversation when we assess a young athlete to say, hey, how much do you enjoy playing second base versus pitching? Because you can pitch for a couple more years and have fun at age 12 and 13. If you've hit puberty first, you'll probably strike out a lot of guys. But the bottom line is you don't have the underlying range of motion attributes to pitch at a high level. And that's probably more a conversation for the parent than the 12-year-old, because it could be pretty disheartening for a kid. But the bottom line is that, it doesn't matter what we do for the kid who's not naturally selected to pitch at a high level. He's not going to pitch at a high level. So I think it's important to just lay that out for a parent. And he can still play baseball at a high level. It's just not going to be on the pitcher's mound. So
Yeah, the coaching high school lacrosse and uh, for high school, so making peanuts, doing it for the love of the game, I'm able to have a level set conversation with kids and parents. My challenges come when parents then take them to a special skills coach,
mm,
so an outside coach, and I do my best to explain that they're also paying this coach $3,000 for 3 months, and they're creating what I'm referring to as fantastic lies. So telling them exactly what that parent wants to hear to keep that money train going. So when I see and communicate otherwise on our high school field, on their team, now all of a sudden I become an enemy.
mm,
And so it's me reframing and trying to level up this conversation to now, instead of going to the tip of the spear Division 1 as promised by the outside coach, we're taking, not saying we're going to Division 1. We're going to focus on college lacrosse.
mm,
So now we've opened up all these different windows of opportunity, different levels, different schools. So it's helping them understand, not taking away like the #1 dream of Notre Dame lacrosse,
sure,
national champion. Let's just present college as an opportunity,
sure,
because often, even after D1, there's only 2 rounds of the professional draft at this sport and not a lot of teams.
right,
So maybe your sons, it'll be a whole different experience, but right now here's the reality, and let's try to keep a dream alive.
sure,
But it took me a lot of failed conversations to realize where I did go wrong, to then now present in future like Syracuse is off the table, brother,
mm,
from where geography and genetics.
mm,
This is Texas. It's just not going to happen. You're not going to get recruited.
right,
Um, and then one note on the recruiting, I've got friends that are D1 coaches, and what they've done now, and this is going to help lead to our next topic, is if for D1 lacrosse, you get recruited in 8th, ninth, and 10th grade, and then you verbally commit and then sign on in your 11 year. So coaches are watching these 8, 9, 10-year old age groups and going and seeing how many tournaments they go to, how many travel tournaments they go to. And if they see the same names, they're marking them off the list,
mm,
because that kid, by the time they're sophomores, are going to be burned out of the sport. And all of a sudden, all of our recruiting class is gone because they were overplaying the
interesting,
sport,
mm-hmm.
especially travel. Because with travel sports, and you know this from baseball, it's just games.
Right,
There's no practice, no development, no
right,
reps. I'm just getting 4 at bats.
right,
Maybe the ball's hit to me, maybe not.
waste of time,
No development.
yeah,
Which I'd love to transition into specialization, because
sure,
everything that you know about baseball is working its way into lacrosse and
mm,
ruining the sport.
mm-hmm. Well, it's such an interesting topic, and you could force me into presenting an argument for either side, specialization or not. I'll start with the argument against specialization because I feel like that would be my view with my own child, is that um, let's just step back and look at the machine of sports development and what's valued now, because it starts at the very top and trickles its way all the way down to 6-year-old development, because parents are watching professional sports, seeing what's valued. What's weird is that by the time their kid is 13 years older and ready for professional contention, what will be valued will very likely swing back in the other direction. It's a pendulum, and it works from in pitching, from velocity to sustainability, back to velocity to movement. There are a lot of things that are being valued at different areas as, data starts to become more and more refined, and we figured out what actually gets players out or hitters out quickly. Um, but what's valued now in professional sports, being velocity, for instance, in pitching, is going to have its effect on the need to specialize. So, in other words, like if I'm going to be able to throw 100 miles an hour when I'm 23 years old, I have no option but to throw way too much to develop that level of skill. So, essentially, the skill level ends up writing checks that the physical development just can't cash. We've got kids that are throwing high 90s at 16 and 17 years old when James Andrews did a study not so long ago, probably a decade ago, just looking at tensile force, I guess, tolerance for the ulnar collateral ligament in the throwing arm. And basically, for an 18-year-old, at 90 miles per hour of throwing velocity, which means 8,500 degrees of humeral spin, it's the fastest movement in humankind. At 90 miles per hour, an 18-year-old's UCL was redlining. Basically, it was a crapshoot as to whether or not he was going to tear his UCL. And this was across the board. So if you are throwing more than 90 miles per hour at an average ligamentous maturity of 18 years, you really are, it's roulette. You may or may not blow out your UCL, and there's really no formula to accurately predict that. So that just tells you that if I'm going to get to 100 miles an hour by the time I'm in professional contention, the last time being 21, 22, and 23 years old coming out of college, I've got to be throwing a certain speed by a certain age to get there. You don't just get 10 mile per hour increment jumps. So to throw 100 plus at age 21, 22, or 23, I probably have to be throwing at a minimum 90 miles per hour at age 18. And we've already seen the studies that anatomically I can't withstand that amount of tensile stress on my UCL consistently at age 18. Ligamentous maturity doesn't happen until age 21 in most athletes. So um, the argument for specialization is that I've got to overthrow to get good enough at throwing hard enough soon enough to get to the big leagues. The argument against it is quite simple. You can't throw too much soon enough, hard enough to get to the big leagues and not get hurt. So truly, when you look at those two sides of the equation, the only pitcher that can get there is a pitcher who throws too much, but was designed at birth to be really tolerant to high level ligamentous stress, and also has a very special nervous system that can adapt to that much skill work. And actually, they become better and better and better at throwing hard. So it's a really complex, but then again, simple formula. But you can argue in either direction. I mean, a healthy kid that's throwing 80 miles an hour because he did things the right way is not getting to the big leagues. A kid that's thrown too much and now throws 100 miles per hour but gets hurt also is probably not getting to the big leagues. One surgery from the moment that you get drafted into the major leagues, between the time you get drafted and between the time you make your debut, reduces your chances of you ever making your major league debut by 50%. A single surgery. So that tells you what you need to know about injury prevention and its importance for getting to the big leagues. But if you got injured, guess what? You probably did the amount of throwing that was required to be able to throw 100 miles an hour. So we're really kind of in between this rock and hard place. And I would argue the best predictor of success in getting to that level has nothing to do with your training regimen. Of course, your training regimen matters, but it has much more to do with how God made you and your genetic makeup, your tolerance for stress ligamentously, and your ability to acquire skill. Basically, who were your parents?
Who are your parents? That is a good one, because I've also seen, and John Smoltz called this out in his Hall of Fame acceptance speech, parents that are having kids do their Tommy John surgery when they're not injured.
That's fascinating. And that is, by the way, insane.
Uh-huh.
That's if it's criminal borderline. You don't elect to have surgery on a minor that's not injured. That is the stuff of lab rat science fiction weirdness.
Well, they were heard it, or somebody did it, and then it worked for them. So yeah, it's very interesting. I mean, parents, I've had a lot of interesting conversations that it surprised me, and I have to reflect and then learn from those, because some of the initial conversations and having to navigate them in regards to performance is I have a new one every year that just blows my mind.
Yeah, that is mind blowing. I'll give you that.
Yeah. So now you're not just baseball, you're getting a lot of kids in here that are athletes.
Sure.
Or for training trends, you probably run classes. It's volleyball, it's basketball, it's football, all smorgasbord, and you're focusing on athletic development. What's your approach to then developing their characteristics, their intangibles, their communication, their teamwork within this arena?
Sure. It reminds me, I'm glad you asked it in that sequence, but when you think about back to the specialization idea, sorry, when you think about the value of not specializing, I'd like to touch on because I think that that is really the way that I feel about development in my heart, with the exception of certain sports that are, unduly skill laden, like pitching
Hmm.
in baseball. Um, I think the totalic development of a young athlete, the ability to do many, many things, kind of a spectrum based athletic development approach for any sport individually, pays dividends at the higher levels. Because what we notice is now that having done this for over 20 years, the kids that we're seeing now that are getting Division 1 opportunities as pitchers, in cases, can't walk and chew gum. They can throw a baseball 95 miles per hour, but if you ask them to do anything outside of their little sleeve of athletic development with pitching, for instance, they're less and less capable of doing those things.
Hmm.
The problem with that is not only it suggests a history of overuse with one thing, so that's injurious, but two, your ability to make adjustments to form and to mechanics when you're at a high level almost sheerly depends on your ability to be athletic.
Hmm.
Because if you're so pigeonholed into one form of development, you have a significantly difficult time making skill adjustments at a high level. And guess what happens, by the way, when you get to the highest level of baseball? As a hitter, you're having to make adjustments sometimes for the first time in your career, because wherever you came from, you were always the best. And at the next level, guess what? You were probably one of the best. And then it kind of continued in that way. You get to the highest levels of the sport with anything, invariably you run into other people that weren't in your small pond, that were the big fish, wherever they were. And you're having to now, for the first time, really adapt to what they're doing because it's better than what you're doing. And what we see is with multi-sport athletes that are now at the highest level, a lot of our hitters in a major league program played quarterback in high school. They played point guard in high school. Those guys have an ability to they're a little more malleable skill wise when they get to the pro level, because they have a spectrum of athletic development growing up. Whereas the kids that didn't have that exposure just can't make adjustments, and they kind of go by the wayside over time with pro sports. You'll see them have shorter careers.
Yeah, they're less coordinated, and then they're less coach able.
That's right. That's a good term, coach able. Yes.
Yeah, taking that feedback
Hmm.
and then having the coordination to make that minor adjustment on the swing or arm position. Have the mind body connection to make that.
That's right. Yeah.
Wild. Yeah, within respect to lacrosse and specialization, we see that at goalie. 'Cause
Hmm.
the rest of the sport is just so creative. You have set plays, but if something goes wrong, a- athlete's going to athlete.
Right.
And so you just have to get creative. And so even in practice, problems arise.
That's right.
But then goalie is just one special thing, one step here. And then watching the highest level, it's the most athletic individuals. So aim to bring that athletic development to this position where you're not doing a lot of running and cutting. You're stagnant for most of the time, but you're quick.
That's right.
So aiming to, and then the game is evolving. That's why I love sports. It's just
Mhm.
different strategies evolve. Where now if my more athletic my goalie is, more you can leave the cage and help in different scenarios.
Interesting.
So
Yeah.
seeing an evolution there, and but then still the parents want to specialize this kid,
Mhm.
specialize this kid. And here's one of the nastiest experiences I've had as a coach is a goalie struggling to learn to throw or with a difficult long pass. So then take him one on one and just try to work on fundamental throwing like a baseball. Lacrosse, we want to throw over the top just like a baseball.
Mhm.
So then take the stick away and just work on the same foot position, the same like a pitcher, big step, opposite arm, opposite leg, and struggled with just throwing a ball like a baseball. And then his dad was watching practice and screams in front of the whole team, "You're never going to fix that." Oh, yeah. Kid heard it. I heard it. I mean, the team, I don't know if they were
Sure,
not engaged,
sure.
but this is real.
Right,
So like I'm getting goosebumps, like blood boiling, just thinking about this.
right.
But the dad is right,
Hmm.
because now it's ingrained in him. So it's just wild that specialization and hovering and yeah, I mean, not allowing yourself to fail. That's why I feel passionate about sports. This is arena where we're independent of mom and dad.
Right,
We can fail
right,
and then learn how to respond to failure.
right.
The beauty of baseball, it's the next pitch, it's the next at
That's
bat,
right.
it's the next time up. And in lacrosse, it's the next play.
Right,
And if I let a goal in, well, my team's still counting on me to stop the next one,
right,
which is, I mean, that's responsibility. That's life.
right.
So it's interesting to see where specialization to get to the top, but at the same time, I feel environment and support network is also important to your success when sport ends. Because even if we're looking at all these dudes on the walls,
It all
sport
comes
ended.
to an end. Yeah, you're right. I love that you mentioned failure and the ability and essentially allowing one to fail as a parent. Um, it calls to mind a story about the 2024 NFL playoffs. A client of mine, Kaimi Fairbairn, had a really big opportunity to hit. Essentially, I can't remember now, a game-tying, game-winning field goal to take the Texans to the AFC Championship game, and for whatever reason, it wasn't his moment. He misses the kick. There's some other factors involved in terms of the technicality of it, but the camera panned to him naturally right after the missed kick, and I asked him about that as we started to review the season and went back and looked at it. I just said, "What were you thinking in that moment?" Because I remember watching him and thinking, "Man, he is completely serene externally. Like that, it's remarkable, and I admire that about him greatly. His ability to process both failure and success. And I think one of his greatest gifts, something that's frankly allowed him to perform at such a high level with such consistency now for so long, is yes, his natural but also trained ability to process outcomes, be it success or failure. But what he said back to me when I asked, "What are you thinking in that moment?" He said, "What did it look like?" And I said, "Well, honestly, you just looked blank. I didn't see anything." He said, "Okay, that's good to hear," because his goal is that within a period of time, a short period of time, if you were to see him, right after a game-winning kick or conversely, an awful miss, uh, his goal would be that you couldn't tell what had happened on the previous play. He allows himself a very short window to process that because, as you mentioned, there's going to be another opportunity shortly thereafter, likely, and you have to have cleared the previous failure or success to be able to have, a perfectly neutral chance of performing in the next one. And you see it with Major League hitting.
Mm-hmm.
If you're the best hitter in the league, you're going to fail 68% of the time, So, but that starts at a young age, and a lot of it is parenting. It's a lot of it like allowing a child to fail, allowing them to process that failure in cases, allowing, of course, when they succeed, being able to not get too high on that.
Timeout. Text here at Train Heroic headquarters, meeting with the team to talk about the coaching experience that I'm able to provide for my athletes. So if you're a coach and want to put your program out there on an app that athletes actually enjoy using, Train Heroics for you. I've been using it since 2014, delivering literally over tens of thousands of workouts to athletes, and the Train Heroic allows me to provide the unique coaching experience that I want to. Uploading video, providing coaching feedback, directions, and building a community. That's why I love Train Heroic. And if you want to take your athletes where they can't take themselves, that they want to go, head to trainheroic.com/captains and check out how you can deliver programming to them. And now back to the show. Ready, and rip.
On that success, while I still coach the sport, one observation is week 1 wins and losses, parents tend to hold on to them in week 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
Mm-hmm.
So coaches, we make adjustments and it's on to the next game. So sometimes mistakes that a coach makes or a kid makes, the parents are still holding on to as we get further and further into the season. So it's very interesting where we're even thinking next at bat, next pitch, next kick. Parents are still on a weeks ago game.
Yeah.
Coach doesn't know what he's talking about and references 1, 2, 3 things.
Right.
Nasty stuff.
Yes.
For going back to the sessions with the team, so what is your coaching now to these younger athlete groups to develop that mindset where they can process wins and losses, and then it's the next rep?
Yeah. I would say, in our setting, because we're sort of isolated to a non-competitive atmosphere officially. There's some competition, athlete to athlete, and like, can I get this weight off the floor or not? That sort of thing. But I would say we're set up, in some ways, unfortunately, for a relatively small percentage of failure in our specific setting. When they get out and compete, that's when they really have to process failing. So it's mostly accumulating wins here, unless they're not trying, because we try to lay out a path that they can incrementally conquer and get better at and get more challenged by. But yeah, a lot of it is just conversation, because we tend to catch athletes either on a high or on a low. They're coming off of something always when they come in, be it a successful season, an injury. We tend to encounter more of the lows, because then people seek us out when they're in a bad place because they've been repeatedly injured. They hear about our process and they come in a desperate situation. So the good news about that for us is that you're usually, when you're in desperation, you become very open-minded, and their ability to sort of truly self-abase and absorb what we're putting forth is a real advantage for both of us, because we can probably get somewhere if they're willing just to subject themselves and surrender to our process. If someone's coming off of a great success, understandably, they're probably not that motivated to change. They shouldn't be, because it worked, So I think our ability to help them process failure really lies in our ability to help them not fail, because we're giving them tools to, this time we won't get hurt, we won't lose, because you're a good athlete and you're going to stay healthy, So we're less on the mental side of like actively teaching how to process failure, or more so on the solution side of not failing again.
Yeah. My solution for that, foot races, just
Okay.
one-on-one.
Yeah.
15 yards. There's no shy. I mean, we're not risking 40s or anything. There's no risk involved except winning and losing.
Yeah, not a lot of hamstrings at 15 yards. But
Yeah, and it's fun. Or spike ball. I don't know if you got a spike ball net here. Have you heard of spike ball?
I've heard of it, but I don't know what that is.
Oh, it's
Is that where you hit it down into the trampoline type
yeah.
thing?
So it's like a little circular volleyball. I don't know what, it's fun.
Sure.
And not a lot of risk there, and certainly some athletic creativity.
Yeah.
Is
and
involved.
Pretty competitive, I can imagine, if you get the right people playing it.
Yeah, you get some of these teenage athletes, boys versus girls, and mixing it up. And then a phrase I've been using a lot is response ability. So 2 words.
Sure.
So training how they're responding to the wins and losses, adversity, or even hamstringing them, pun intended, if it's 2 versus 1. So if it's spike ball 2 versus 1, well, it's like, well, this is unfair.
Life is
how are
unfair.
you responding?
Yeah.
So helping to gamify responsibility.
Yeah, I'm gonna use that. That's prudent good stuff.
Yeah. Like Coach Abel, 2 words. So trying to present to that, how are you responding to different things? Because the refs they're people too. They're going to make mistakes.
Right.
And even though it's not fair or it is the wrong call, how are you going to respond? That sets up success for the rest of the game.
Sadly, there probably will be no wrong calls, as we were talking about with AI going forward.
Well, the high schools can't afford that.
I know. But there'll come a point when we're going to have robots coaching refereeing bitty basketball games and making perfect decisions, which is scary, but
not in my league. I'll see to it. I'll overcoach just to prevent that from happening.
Yeah.
Bring value to the scenario. Winding down, I want to talk about coach development. You have young coaches come in, they get their opportunity from personal training to group training to working with some professionals potentially. So what's your approach to welcoming in a new coach? Do you look for somebody with experience, certifications, or green that you can teach your process and then lead them to your professional level and standard of coaching?
Sure. Both. So we are looking for the right people at all times. So we have 5 well-established core values, and we interview and hire based on uh, kindred core values, essentially. So if someone is at this professional age, one, all of our trainers are degreed and certified, but as a prerequisite to interview. But we have an academic internship process, which teaches our process over the course of an 11-week semester. It's very competitive to get into the internship. That's our most viable path to a full-time coaching job here. But I think above that, we value the type of person someone is as opposed to their knowledge level at a given time, because we can offer them acquired expertise over time, teaching them what we've learned over decades of service. But we cannot take someone who understands it all and make them into a good person. And we really do value the personal part of personal training. So much of it is dealing with a human being, understanding how to relate to them, responding to where they are in a given day, and kind of meeting them where they are. And those aren't people skills that we can teach. Most of that happened in the home a very long time ago. To touch on a parent with a child, allowing them to experience failure and process that and work through it in a healthy way. So many of those lessons that we're now dealing with as adults and professionals, they were taught long, long ago before we ever met this person. And the ability to kind of, teach someone that now at an older age is just not a project that we would be able to successfully take on or could. We want good people that have a passion for what we're doing, have an attentiveness to detail, have a heart for service, and then we can make them experts over the course of time. That's what we really offer on the sort of joining our team front. So
Sweet. Well, man, I appreciate your time, and I'm gonna get a picture in front of this wall just so I can see the difference between my wingspan and JJ Watt's. But beautiful facility, lots of space, lots of turf, and even a golf simulator in the back.
That's right, TrackMan.
Yeah, which, I mean, that's where I would learn how to fail, is getting on that thing before getting out into the real world golf.
I've had a real education in that failure too, so don't feel bad.
Cool. Well, thanks for your time, man.
Thank you, Chris.
Yeah.
It was fun, man.
If you're in Houston, Fairchild Performance, check it out. And if people want to continue to learn from you and your journey, your growth, where should they learn?
Sure, they can find us on Instagram at FSP, _training. And that's probably where we put the majority of our Con Ed opportunities is just on social media now.
Sweet. Well, ended on that note,
All right.
We're getting an important call. So thank you for everyone for tuning in. Bye.
Thanks, Chris.
See you.